Look great. Lighting's good.
Oh, that's going a long way.
You look pretty. Everything's fine. Suncast, do you want to start the stream? Give us just a minute here, Andy, and
Okay.
we're going to after Suncast starts the stream, about 30 seconds after that.
And did you ask if we could start with slide 1 as an opening and then advance to slide 45?
Oh, check your email if you can. Andy, we sent you a link for controlling the slides. Now, this won't necessarily jump from 1 to 45, but once we get on 45, you should be able to advance it with the little applet that pops up from that link.
Okay.
It's that bubnet.suncast.com. I wonder where we got that name.
There we
are. Bubnet.suncast.com. That sounds suspiciously familiar.
That's Florida option.
I'm sorry, Andy, what'd you
say? Said it must have been a Florida operation to begin with. Suncast.
No, you're thinking of Sunkissed.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I thought that was a play on Suncast.
Suncast is our producer's secret code name.
Okay.
That everybody calls him. All right, I'm still looking for the stream. Hang on a second. There we go. And we'll like and share.
Okay, so I need another, and I don't have anything I can do, so we may just have to ask for slides change again.
You need another what?
Yeah. Have you got two screens, Tom?
You don't need two screens. You can just put that little applet. You should be able to
downsize
Suncast.
that?
Talk him through that. Does it open full size? He needs to just make a small tab, or what does he need to do?
Yeah, Tom's trying to do that now. There, that'd work.
Yeah. Okay. All right, give me a moment here. Almost finished with sharing this out. Share this to a web page, This Week in Radio.
Tom, I'm probably not going to do any backs, so.
Yeah, just forward. Yeah, that's good. That's what we need.
That's all right. I'll just ask for a slide change. Okay. And
all right, just a minute. Almost finished with my job here.
Well, let's just go with it. I'll just tell him what I want to change. That's fine. Just forget it. I'll ask him to change it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When Suncast changes to the, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just roll with it. Suncast, whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Let me see if I can. Let me real quick close out a couple things so I don't have any. All right. Minimize my other issues. Okay, Suncast. We should see my CPU usage decreasing as I closed a few things, and we are ready to go. All right. Andy, you're ready to go. I'm ready to go. Slideshow's ready to go. And remember, we'll get into the slideshow after our first spot break. Oh. Hey, everybody on the network. Glad you're here. This is the live portion of the show that we cut out for the published portion. And we're just about ready to get into it. I'm a little crowded here because I've got a cart machine here. If I move the microphone out of the way. Andy, can you can see that, Andy, right?
I can see it. Yes.
Yeah, I'll have that available for show and tell when we get, later on in the show when we get to a appropriate point. I have another cart machine in here too. Andy, I'll go ahead and show it to you. I got to move the camera to show you, but I have a
All right, an SP.
Yeah, an SP, and it controls that light right there. So if I pull the cart out, the light goes off.
Yep.
And if I push the cart in and push start, the light turns back on.
Yep.
I did that all by my lonesome one day. All right, here we go. Let's start at 6 minutes after. It's episode 748, and we'll start This Week in Radio Tech in 3, 2. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb at the top of the tower. Good afternoon or good day or good morning, wherever you're tuning in. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host, and I'm in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. This is where I usually do the show from, and it's a cloudy day. We got bad weather coming. We had a beautiful lunchtime, though. My goodness. My wife made some shrimp, and what else did we have? Shrimp and salad and something else, but now I can't remember what it was. Anyway, it was all good. It was just a beautiful day. We're talking, I should say, Chris Tarr, my usual co-host, he is busy still putting in a transmitter, including doing a proof on the new transmitter. So Chris is unable to join us this week. But that's okay because our guest is here, and that is Andy Rector. Andy, welcome in. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And you are coming to us from somewhere in the heart of Illinois, right?
Bloomington, Illinois. Home of the first cartridge machines we claim.
and that has something to do with your presence there, why you're there, and why you're still here, a good 50, 60 years later, right?
That's true.
It's a lot to think about. A lot of time has passed. So Andy is going to, on last week's show, we got through, probably almost 2/3 of our presentation about cart machines. And it's worth seeing because, for years and years, decades even, we used cart machines in broadcast facilities. In fact, I've got one right here. We'll look at it a bit more later on. Let me move the mic out of the way. I've got a tape caster right here. Later on, Andy can give us a little history on that. And when we talk about carts, for those of you young whippersnappers, this is what we're talking about here. It's an endless loop of tape in a plastic cartridge. These are a standard design that became standardized. And they put a couple of foam pads right here so that the heads would have something to press the tape against it to provide a little bit of close contact with the heads. And then they had a hole in the bottom. Some people say, that looks like an 8-track tape. Well, it does look a little bit like an 8-track tape. It's actually a little bit different size. But it's got an 8-track tape has a pinch roller built into it. And you'd push the 8-track in and it would hit the cap stand, the motor, the little shaft of the motor that's running. But this is different. This has a wheel that pops up and hits the back of the tape and squeezes it really hard against the cap stand that's out here. So the pinch roller comes up. We'll demonstrate that a little bit later on in the show. But that's the difference. This is not an 8-track tape. It's an NAB cart. This particular one looks like it was about 70 seconds worth of audio. I think that's right. So anyway, enough of that. Andy, let's give a little preview. What's our story about today and how will we wrap up the story of cart machines? Just give us a little tease preview.
Last time we ended up talking about all cartridge radio. And I talked about Fred Zellner and the ABC Group and a number of other large broadcasters as being maybe the instigators of all cart. As I started thinking about that during this past week, I started to realize that probably the all cart concept was more important to middle-sized or smaller radio stations than it was to the big guys. The big guys had engineers to play the cartridges and cue the tapes and various things like that, but it was the combo operator that was on the line for making everything happen in a radio station. So that's where I wanted to start this week and just talk about all cartridge broadcasts.
when you say all cart, do you mean no, at least no regular use of turntables or reel-to-reel machines in the control room? You mean it's everything that plays on the air besides the
A
live mic?
microphone,
Everything is cart.
you could have a microphone and cartridge machines, and that's about all you needed, other than the teletype to rip your news from or something of that nature. But
Wow.
let's see. So, do we want to start there?
No, I tell you
Are
what, we're going
you
to take our first quick commercial announcement because we squeeze it in here at the beginning because they paid for it, and I'm always glad to to trade money for sponsorship. That's the way I am. Got bills to pay. It's Kirk Harnack this week in Radio Tech, and Andy Rector is our guest. Stay tuned because Andy's got more of this story to tell, and we're going to start out with all cart radio in just a minute. Right now, though, I want to hear from a fellow who's become a good friend of mine, and I really love this company, Air.com. Here's Ricky Lee. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack, and I'm here with Ricky Lee, the CEO of Air. Ricky, you guys make a fantastic automation system, but streaming is a really big deal. Tell me about streaming with Air.
It really is. We've got a beautiful streaming platform with an incredible dashboard with fantastic analytics. And you can buy it for just $20 a month, all you can eat. No limits on bandwidth or bit rates. And you can also record shows as well. So if you like to deliver on-demand content for $20 a month, you can stream and deliver that on-demand content to an RSS feed that can feed your radio player, your mobile apps, or a podcast that people can download and enjoy.
Now, $20 a month, that must be for just some slow MP3, right?
No, MP3, AAC, and we also now support HLS, which is big in the industry right now.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. How do I start to explore or find out more about streaming through Air?
You go to air.com, AIIR.com/streaming. And from there, with a credit card, you can sign up and get started.
You know, Air.com, they're also the people who make the Playout One radio automation system. And I love Playout One. We use it at all of our stations, 21 stations altogether. And I have gotten really accustomed to it and love it a lot. Thanks a lot, Ricky Lee and all the folks at Air.com. Okay, it's Kirk Harnack, and Andy Rector is our guest. Andy, it's all yours. Let's jump right into it with your story about all cart radio.
Well, it occurred to me that it was the smaller operations that probably got the most benefit from the all cart operation. And I did a rewind, and I was working at WQOK in Greenville, South Carolina at that time. And I was the midnight guy. I went to school in the daytime and worked at the radio station from 12 until 5 in the morning. And as I had a first phone, which was required because WQOK was directional and they had to have a first phone on duty, so I could do the complete combo operation. And that included news. It was rip and read and commercials, which were usually done from reel to reel machines, jingles, which were also reel to reel. And there was a lot of rewinding and changing of reels of tape and looking for cut number 46 on a tape that had 99 cuts on it. Not an easy thing to do. And I'm exaggerating to make a point. But it was a very, very active assignment to do all that sort of thing. And jingles, which were on reel to reel. And I made a note that, thank God, that year, Marty Robbins came out with El Paso. And that was the longest cut, I think, that was ever put on a 45 RPM record. And it did allow the combo operator to take a much needed break occasionally. So you heard a lot of El Paso being played. It was a very fast paced operation. At that time, I was attending Furman University in the daytime. And the WQOK owners attended the NAB in Washington, D.C. and bought the first cartridge machines that WQOK had ever had. We thought we had died and gone to heaven. It was a wonderful thing. So it made life simple because we got rid of most of the reel-to-reels and other devices that we had to do a lot of work with. So that was kind of the background that I wanted to give you. It was a very, very fast-paced and busy operation. And the cart machine was a real lifesaver at that point in time.
Hey, Andy, I got to interject for a second. Man, you are so right, and you're bringing back memories. You're a little older than am I, but when I got into radio, we were just past the point of using reel to reels for commercials. In other words, the most ancient piece of equipment that I used was a cart machine for playing spots and jingles. And at several stations, we kept the current songs on cart to avoid playing them on record and getting them cue burned. That way, the record wouldn't get cue burned until it became a recurrent, because we didn't have enough money or carts to buy, 75 of them for recurrent songs. So once it became a recurrent, it went and we used the 45. By the way, Marty Robbins, El Paso, you're right. So many songs back then were 2 and 3 minutes long. Whether it was a
Right.
pop format or a country format, El Paso was 4 minutes and 38 seconds long. And that was an eternity back then in the
Oh,
1960s,
you're
wasn't it?
not kidding.
Seems like
That's true.
I had to play Inagata Davida or something like that to go to the bathroom. All right,
Which
I'm sorry.
didn't,
Good.
yeah, okay. So, okay,
Go ahead
so
with your story. Yeah.
with those thoughts in mind, I think we could go to slide number 51, and we can take it up from there. So after WQOK, I was invited to go back to my hometown, Russellville, Kentucky, WRUS, which is just 55 miles north of Nashville. And I was the chief engineer at that point and making little headway in my college career. So after a year or so, I went back and finished my degree and interviewed for a lot of different jobs. Took a job with Caterpillar Tractor Company. I grew up as a farm boy, and I thought that would be a good area to use my marketing degree. And and after having taken that job, I got a call from the general manager and part owner of the radio station in Russellville and said, "We just got a license for a new FM radio station, and we'd like for you to come back and build that radio station." And I thought, oh, this is a job I've always wanted. What an opportunity. I can't uh, at all pass up on this opportunity. So I did that and was given a great deal of leeway in choosing the equipment for the radio station. And in the process, went to the NAB and chose to get by a an ATC automation system for the new FM radio station. And in the process, met Elmo Franklin. Elmo was the sales manager at ATC and became my mentor and loved him like a brother. He was a wonderful, wonderful guy, and everybody that knew him seemed to just think that Elmo Franklin was the greatest guy on earth. Also, there, we talked about these guys last week, were Ted Bailey, who was the chief engineer at WJBC and now had moved away from the radio station, along with Jack Jenkins, his assistant, and they were both at Automatic Tape Control. And they had gotten into program automation systems, which was accounting for a good part of their operation. So that's where we need to get back to slide number 45, if we could do that, please. And that will, okay. So one of this slide is here to remind me that the industry had grown considerably at this point in time without any standards for NAB cartridges. So one machine might be quite different from another, and things just weren't being brought together in a uniform fashion. So
Hmm.
Jack Jenkins took an interest in all that and started working on establishing the first NAB standards for tape cartridge machines. And they established the 1 kilohertz tone as the stop tone, and I think 3 kilohertz was the end tone, and there was an 8 kilohertz, which at ATC we used for logging purposes and put some digital information on, which could identify what the cartridge was, and so on and so forth. In addition to not having any standards, we also did not have any test tapes. Ampex had, of course, everybody in the industry had an Ampex test tape and would align the heads on their reel-to-reel machines, but there was nothing like that for a cartridge. So one day, Dave Wolfenden, one of my coworkers at Automatic Tape Control, went into our studio there where he made some tapes for for automation systems and so forth. And he created the Hippy Dippy test tape, which is attached here. If we can play that, and we'll just play a little excerpt. This is not. I don't think it has any.
I'm told that we can't play it, so I'm sorry we can't get that. We'll try to get a link to it or something on the show notes. I got a question. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I got a question that's always bothered me, Andy, about the head design, the track design, and maybe you were getting this anyway. But when did we get? Well, I guess at first we just had two tracks, right? Mono audio and a Q track. So I guess could you just use a stereo tape head from a reel-to-reel machine, and that would work,
Well,
right?
The first cartridge machines were all mono, and so as a result, you used the combined audio on track one, a stereo mix down to a single track, and the bottom part of the head had the Q tones, and you had a record head and a playback head. So the Q tone would stop the machine, and it was automatically recorded by in the recording process, so that it would be there for stopping the cue or the tape when it came 360 degrees back around to the beginning.
But I would imagine that these first machines, you could use a two-track head from reel-to-reel machines in order to make
and that's exactly what they were.
Cart machine.
They were just stereo heads that were used, one track for audio and the other for cue. Later on,
and I won't spoil the surprise, but I hope you'll tell us when we ended up getting three tracks and how that standard came to be. And then I know there was a variation on that standard, maybe a couple variations on that standard later on, maybe come along in the 80s. But go ahead with your story from here.
A different variation on that, but I'll get to that when we go back to the presentation. So anyway, Dave Wolfenden created this Hippy Dippy test tape, which was a joke. And one of the first orders we got was from one of our competitors. So we sent that out to them. And about 2 days later, the general manager of tape, I'm a California company, I can't remember right now, called me up to say, thanks a lot. He said, I went back in my plant yesterday. We got your test tape in. And he said, everybody in the plant was hovered around the cartridge machine listening to the Hippy Dippy test tape, which was a joke. And but we brought his operation to a full halt. And of course, that was the objective of the whole thing. Stop the competition. And we had a great relationship. But anyway, that was just one of those fun things that we did. And the industry was pretty close in many, many ways. So if we could now go to slide 51, I think we can resume having gotten through all of that information on combo operations and so forth.
And just to be clear, as we're going to slide 51, when you say combo, you're referring to AM and FM combo. Is that what you mean?
No, I'm saying a combination of everything is reduced down to cartridge machines.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that kind of combination.
Gotcha.
Okay, right. So let's see. Okay, so I think the previous slide probably says that Jack Jenkins, Elmo Franklin, Merle Wilson, and I broke away from automatic tape control. This was after Gates Radio Company had purchased automatic tape control and started ITC. And the thing here was that Jack had been working with Press Weaver at the Bow Motor Company on coming up with a direct drive motor. The first cartridge machines were belt drive machines, and they were not well regulated. So by the time you got a motor that was not running exactly on speed and mix in a belt that was slipping a little bit and everything, you could have some pretty difficult variations in wow and flutter and various things of that nature that tape recording specialists will identify with. And so Jack had decided that he needed to have a direct drive motor, and he selected a 450 RPM motor, and he wanted to have the maximum contact with the tape and the capstan in order to reduce as much as possible any tape slippage that might occur. So he was very specific about having a 450 RPM motor. Now, prior to that, and we've jumped over a couple of slides, so I'm just going to try to make up for that. Most of the motors had been running at 600 RPM. Jack was what I have always considered a mechanical genius. He didn't have an extensive educational background, but when it came to mechanics, Jack had the ability to simplify a difficult and complex mechanical mechanism and make it very, very simple. And in this case, a direct drive motor to replace a flywheel, a motor, and a belt that or a rubber band, so to speak, that was driving the capstan. And so now we've got a direct drive motor, which we consider to be a very, very great improvement in tape drive considerations. And again, I think this is a later slide. One of the guys that ended up at ITC was Carl Martin. And Carl Martin had worked at ATC, and we had a lot of funny stories to tell about that, but we'll skip over that. But Carl decided to leave ITC, and he created Audicord Corporation. And he did not agree with Jack on the motor design, the 450 RPM, which Jack wanted for maximum tape contact. He decided the 600 RPM, for some reason that I never quite understood, was a better choice. And so he continued to use the 600 RPM motor. So I think that
and
we
just
can move.
To expand on that just a bit, if the motor is running more slowly, then the capstan, the part that pulls the tape through, can be physically bigger because it's all going to work out to 7.5 inches per second anyway. Correct. So if the motor's running at 600 RPM, at 450, it's going to be a bigger capstan. At 600, it's going to be a smaller capstan, which will give you a little bit less contact area there with that smaller shaft. Am I right about that?
That was exactly what Jack's theory was on that, and I always believed that was probably correct. But 600 RPM worked well, and most of the other manufacturers used a 600 RPM motor. And at ITC, we used a direct drive 450 RPM motor, and it seemed to work very, very well in almost every case.
I noticed, if I could add one more thing, that I think that ITC or somebody had a capstan that they had, I don't know the right words, they had roughed up a little bit.
So that sandblasted. And so it gave you, they were, it gave a rough surface. Not that sounds like rocks in a road, but it's just barely, the granular texture is very, very light, but it did give you better friction with the tape, and it did a better job of driving.
Indeed, I would describe it as it looked smooth, but not shiny.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Just enough to make it all finish.
So the idea here was to get really good regulation of pulling the tape through at a very constant speed, both in the short term, both to reduce flutter, but also in the long term, so it was always the same speed coming past the heads.
Right. And so the large diameter gave us an improvement. The pressure roller was a major consideration. And let's see. Let's advance to another slide. I'm not sure what number that one is. Can we go to the next one? Okay. This is a real. We're way ahead of where I hope to be. But
okay. Well, if you can give us a slide number, we can as long as our decks
51
match.
was where I had intended to start, and then
okay.
If we could get to there, let's see what I've got.
As long as the decks match up, and then they should. But I thought Suncast started where you had asked him to, but let's see where he goes. We'll bring it up. Sorry, we can't. You think we could just let you present it from there, but this production platform does not lend
Well,
itself to
52
that
somewhere
at
in there
all.
because we've okay. So yeah, that's where we were. And the next one, I'm not sure. Maybe our numbers are
He says
different
this is
somewhere.
slide 51. This is slide 51. So this is where we
Okay.
talked about the 600
Okay. So
RPM
let's
motor.
go to yeah. That's where the three companies were competing locally, and so let's go to 52 then. All right. And then as time went along, we continued to try to improve on the tape cartridge machine design. And Jack came up with a Series 99, which we thought was the ultimate tape cartridge machine. He not only included the 450 RPM motor. Oh, and I forgot to talk about the solenoid in this operation. The ATC solenoid was a full throw solenoid that we talked about last week. In other words, you put the cartridge in, when you push the button, the pressure roller comes all the way up through the cartridge, engages the tape, and causes the cartridge to run. So in the Series 99, he decided to go with an air-damped solenoid, and it was the most beautiful and I thought the greatest creation that we'd ever seen. It consisted of a miniature bicycle chain, and it was linked with a pin in the cross shaft, which was the pressure roller was attached to, and the solenoid was air damped for quiet operation, and it was a precision solenoid, and the air damping eliminated the thud that could occur if you didn't have something to insulate it. It worked beautifully, and the Series 99, I think, was where we first used that, and it also incorporated an automated azimuth adjustment. You could put a tape in, and since the biggest problem with a tape cartridge of the original design was that the tape has to come out of the center of the cartridge, go up and over and down and around the head assembly. So you're changing the plane on that. And yes, in the lower left corner here, you'll see that the tape is coming out of the center, going around a white roller there, and is then presented to the record head and then the playback head. And that is not something that you like to do in handling tape. It's a
I got to point out
complex.
that that's a painfully short tape path for getting the tape stable. That's like a jet airliner not bothering to make a final approach, but just coming in from any old direction and boom, landing on the numbers on the runway.
That's a great
it's
analogy.
not the best way to handle that.
Yeah. Okay, so that servo motor and the tape eraser are all built in, so it was about as automatic as you could get in the creation of tape cartridge recordings. So let's
Andy, I just realized that we're gonna need to take a quick break here, but I got a quick question about the solenoids. You are right to point out the genius of these 99 series solenoids that would pull this plunger in, pull a little tiny bicycle chain, and end up turning that shaft up to hit the pinch roller, and it was all air damped in the back because, oh my goodness, when I started in radio, the cart machines would sound like kerchunk every time you'd start something. If you had your mic open, kerchunk. Well, and so these things were nearly silent. They were just terrific. When we come back, though, we'll find out about these other improvements. A lot of them from ITC, and I was very pleased to be an engineer at that time and got to install a lot of these things. I also got to replace a number of erase coils from ITC 99 series machines, and I'm sure you can tell us about that. Our show this week in Radio Tech with Andy Rector here is brought to you in part by Broadcast Bionics and their fantastic suite of software. You can pick and choose the items that you want or get the entire suite for the Bionic Studio. Let's hear from them about this Bionic Studio.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These could be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
You know, no matter how much we love cart machines, the Bionic Studio is way, way ahead of cart machines and does so many things to make you, the presenter, the disc jockey, to make your talent better on the air, doing what they do naturally, but letting them do it better and then creating content from it. All the stuff the Bionic Studio does is amazing. Check it out at bionics.co.uk, bionic.co.uk. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack here at This Week in Radio Tech, our 748th episode. Andy Rector is with us. And Andy, I guess we'll just continue here from the 1970s. We got the 99B cart machine. I'm sorry, was that early in the 80s that came out?
Yes.
Late 70s. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, I started my full-time engineering career in 84. That's when I opened Harnack Engineering. So, but I had seen some 99Bs before that. Anyway, go ahead. Let's see what's next on the countdown.
Well, the slide that just jumped up there reminds me that there were also some other things that were happening in the late 80s. Jack Williams at Pacific Recorders and Engineering came up with his cat cart, and it was an innovative mono stereo compatible head design, and the machine was really very, very impressive. I've always said that if Jack had introduced that machine in 1980 or thereabout, in the early 1980s, it could have been the machine that everybody would have loved. The problem was that the industry was coming to a close, computers were closing in, and the whole situation was about to make a major change. And in 1982, let me go back one step further. 3M had introduced what they called a Centricart. That cartridge machine was shown at one NAB show, I think, but it never reached the market. And what they did was they put the heads inside the center of the cartridge, and it was a cartridge you had to drop down into a machine rather than sliding it into a cartridge slot, as we know from the standard NAB type cartridge. That was an impressive design, and it might have done well at the beginning of the history of the cartridge machine, but it was too late for them to change the standards and get everybody to move. I've always been interested because 3M ended up buying ITC on January 1, 1982, as this slide shows. And I think it was because they thought that the tape industry was going to last forever. And we recognized that it was coming to a close and thought that probably computers would be the answer to many of the radio stations' dreams of the future. So instead of introducing the Centra cart, 3M introduced what they called a Scotch cart, which was a slightly different design, and it was an improvement over the original cartridge design, but not a revolutionary type thing. An improvement, but not, a drastic change. So let's go to the next slide, if we could. Let's see. I believe that's Fidelipac introduced the Bocart. No, I've forgotten who the Bocart was. Fidelipac introduced their Dynamax machines in that period of time. And then ITC, 3M ITC at that point, launched the Delta series, which was a less expensive design than the Series 99. And so let's advance the slide again. Let's see. Unfortunately, my picture is over part of my notes there. But let's see. Then 3M became, I think, disenchanted with the tape industry. They came to the realization that tape wasn't going to be around for the long haul, and they sold ITC to some Canadian investors. And then in 1991, I purchased Audicord from Carl Martin, who wanted to retire. And by 1999, we were selling the last of the cartridges, and the era was coming to a close. And so 40 years after the introduction in 1959, the official introduction, the industry essentially came to a close, and things went off into the computer arena. I have a whole different presentation that I can provide on the ITC 1K machine, which was 1,024 cartridges. And I think we mentioned that last week.
We did.
It was never commercially available. We sold a couple of those machines, and that was the end.
I have a couple of questions. I used to have a number of different brands of NAB carts here at my office. Sadly, right now, I'm only finding these Fidelipacs. Not sadly, these were kind of to me, the industry standard. There are more of these that I saw at radio stations than anything else. They weren't necessarily my favorite. They were inexpensive, which is maybe why I saw so many of them. One thing I noticed about these that you can tell me about was this little wire right here that would get pushed up out of the way by the pinch roller coming up, and it would release a little catch to a sprocket down here on the big wheel that went around that holds the tape. I think this was to hold it from shimmying around while you didn't have it in a machine. Yeah.
I think that was a late modification of the original Fidelipac cartridge. I don't think the original had that particular feature in it. The 3M cartridge that they offered and that ITC was selling, if you could hold that back up again, the cartridge, the tape came off in the what would be the vertical, the up at the top here. You can't see my finger, but if you point around to the top,
like here,
come down to the tape here. The tape came up here, right about where your finger is, and it was stabilized. And instead of making this short trek between the center of the cartridge and the left corner post, it came off and went around two posts so that it was in a better alignment with the heads when it got to that particular point. And that was another improvement and embellishment on the cartridge. And that was in the
that was in the Scotch cart. And the Scotch cart, I always felt like was the absolute gold standard because it seemed to be the best engineered. It used a couple of different shell materials, and it had some white plastic in there that to me looked like Teflon, or it may have contained some Teflon, but I think it was slipperier than the regular plastic that the rest of it was made out of.
I haven't seen one of those in a number of years, so I don't remember exactly how it worked, but I need to find one of those for my archives.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
Well,
and so,
these were. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
well, as I said, so the end of the '80s really was the conclusion of the cartridge era, and things started to move toward computers, and the companies that had been stalwarts in the cartridge business started to disappear, and the industry was we were closing an era.
I want to. I can't move my camera too much, but I'm gonna move it a little bit here. We're going to take a closer look at this tapecaster machine, and Andy, you please feel free to narrate a bit here. This tapecaster was one of the early designs where you had a motor. The motor was here, and it was shock mounted, to get rid of rumbling. The motor is under here, and then there was a belt from the motor over to a flywheel over here, and the flywheel. This is the capstan. The flywheel would be, under here, much larger than the capstan. So that made this thing really heavy, as well as a power transformer. And I would assume this one's solid state. I haven't looked inside.
I'm sure that playback would have been, because the original tapecasters came out with solid state playbacks and tube type recorders, and I think Paul had worked at Fidelipac. I'm not, or one of those other companies. I can't remember. And he broke away and started the tapecaster operation.
Now, this was one of the cart machines that had a short throw solenoid. And so you see the screw right here with an adjustment screw. When you push the cart into it, you would actually, and unfortunately the lighting isn't conducive to this, but the pinch roller is up now. It's up right here, but not all the way up. It still lacks maybe 3/16 of an inch before it gets to push, to squeeze the tape against the capstan. And so here's the solenoid over here, and it would pull in, and it would pull. Now, to get the tape out, though, even when it was done playing, you couldn't just pull it out. You had to push this eject button right here.
Yeah.
Let's see. There we go. Yeah.
The advantage of that machine was that the solenoid was a fairly expensive part of the operation. The solenoid and the motor were probably the two most expensive parts of a cartridge machine when you look at a bill of materials. And so as a result, by going to a design of this type, you can reduce the size of the solenoid. The air damp solenoid on the ITC machine was probably about twice as large as that one, and necessary to do a full swing. And but that doesn't mean that the machines didn't perform well. Tapecaster always was a good competitor.
Something that I really, really honestly, Andy, had not noticed until just today, was you've got two heads in here. This is a playback only machine. This machine doesn't record, yet it's got two heads. This one is a dummy head. It has no wires going to the back of it. It's just there to provide a proper and typical amount of pressure and tension for the system as the tape goes past.
Yeah, it smooths the tape travel out by putting a little back pressure on the tape and eliminating some wow and flutter that might occur.
Indeed, because you could not depend on this part of the tape travel to back tension the tape. And even though there's a pressure pad in here, these are worn out, but there's a pressure pad up in here to push it against the playback head. If the first pressure it encounters is right at the playback head, that's no guarantee of a little bit of back tension on the tape to keep it from fluttering. So that's why you had the dummy head and why you had the pressure pad here. Although if you were recording, well, the recording would happen here, correct, on this first hole,
right?
And then it would play back right here. Yeah. Now some people go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish yours.
Some people made a profanity delay out of tape cartridges. And in that case, things got complicated. You had a like what you have 7 seconds worth of tape on this thing, and you'd have the record
Right.
head here, and so it'd get
Right.
recorded, go around for 7 seconds, come back, and get played back.
Play it back.
How was it? Was there a
Erase.
little erase head up in there?
It was a combo erase record head. You had
Oh,
the bias in the erase section was high level and erased the tape, and then it facilitated the recording in this next section of the head, right next door to each other.
I'm reminded where I stole this cart from, WNLA. Now, this is in Indianola, Mississippi. It's a black gospel station. Do you know who owned WNLA for quite a few years? It was Eddie Fritz Jr., who was head of the president of the NAB for some years. In fact, I think he was the first paid president of the NAB, because when he got in and he knew that it was an unpaid position to that point, he said, no, it's going to be a paid position. It's going to pay handsomely too. Hey, Andy, we've got to take another quick break. I don't know what you've got for us as we finish up our story, but you think about it, because we're going to have it right after this break. This Week in Radio Tech with Andy Rector, and the history of tape cart machines, some of the personalities, people, and companies involved. And it's so fun to reminisce about this kind of stuff and look at the designs that we, as engineers, that we dealt with for not only years, but decades. And don't get me started on replacing capacitors in various machines, particularly ITC machines. Not that they were bad capacitors, but, when the machine is sitting there running for 15 years, you kind of got to update some of the gear, the stuff inside. Hey, this show is brought to you in part by Angry Audio and the Angry Audio Rave audio console. This is a gorgeous piece of equipment, and I keep seeing pictures of these on Facebook going into various studios in different places, some at schools, some at radio stations, some at podcast studios, some in people's homes. The Rave radio mixer is absolutely gorgeous. Look at this thing. It's got 8 faders. The first 4 faders can be either mic or line level inputs, and the mics can come in on a XLR connector, as you might expect. The line level inputs can come in on Studio Hub connectors. Those are like RJ45s, but they're meant for analog audio. They work great for that. This is an analog console. There's no digital anything in the console. It's meant to be simple and effective, and its strengths are in the places that you really need it. So broadcast grade construction. This thing is built, I know, an tired old saying, like a tank. You pick one of these things up and feel it, play with it, put your hands over it, hit it once or twice, you'll discover, yeah, it's built like a tank. All the other audio inputs and outputs are on Studio Hub, RJ45 connectors. The electronics inside are just whisper quiet and super clean, because they were designed by Mike Dosh. Mike Dosh is famous for having started his broadcasting career at PRE. So, working with Jack Williams there, he knows something about designing really good circuitry. The Rave console, check it out at angryaudio.com. You can buy it from any of their dealers, quite a few dealers like Radio Gearheads or Broadcast General Store. Any of their dealers can get you a good quote and get a Rave console out to you right away. Post haste. Thanks a lot, Angry Audio at angryaudio.com. Our show is also brought to you by Max Connect, and they do the wireless thing, 4G LTE prioritized data. That means you don't have to contend with all the riffraff on their cell phones updating their Facebook pages. You get prioritized data. But what they also have at Max Connect is this U.192. What is that box? Well, that box is a USB sound card, but it's so much more. It's not an ordinary USB sound card. It's meant specifically for one important purpose, something that, frankly, nobody else actually does. Nobody else makes a product that's designed to take the USB output of a computer that's running an FM audio processor and take this output with MPX audio on it and turn that into real analog MPX output, like your Exciter wants to have, or like your 950 megahertz STL wants to have. There's the back of it right there. Suncast is scrolling, and he's stopped here on the back picture of the U192. It's got analog in, so you can feed analog to your computer that's running FM processing software. It's got analog out, so you can bring whatever your processor can put out, like a headphone feed or a processed feed. You can listen to it out, that analog out. It's got a digital in for AES EBU in, and it's got a digital out for AES EBU digital out. And then there's that USB connector. Even cooler, this is a class compliant device. That means there's no drivers to install. You plug it into literally into a computer like a PC, Windows PC that's running, let's say, Omnia SST or Stereo Tool or Breakaway One. Any of those will put out MPX to this device, and it is super duper clean. And if you know anything about FM transmission, that MPX needs to be super duper clean. That is absolutely critical. It is available from any of the dealers who sell Max Connect wireless stuff, and there's a whole list of them on the website. Max Connect. Thanks a lot, maxconnect.com, for sponsoring this week in Radio Tech. And by the way, next week, we're going to be interviewing Josh Bone at a radio station in Alabama to, we'll mostly talk about the radio station, but we'll talk about some of the technologies that they're putting to use. All right, it's Kirk Harnack, and I'm here with Andy Rector. Andy, we've got about 10 minutes before our next break. How would you like to kind of wrap up our story here in the next 10 minutes or so? What's next on your agenda?
Well, one of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to get that last slide that I've got, because I interviewed a lot of people to put together my history, and I'd like to give them credit if we could. I'm hoping that the fellow at the top, his name will show up, because he did a tremendous, David McFarland.
We see it just fine.
The tape cartridge machine. Never did understand exactly why he was so fascinated with it, but he did an archaeology of the whole thing and did a fine job of putting that together. Ted Bailey and Jack Jenkins, ATC, Elmo Franklin, I talked about, my mentor, Bill Molick at Sonamag. Jack Selmeyer, who had been at Gates Radio Company, helped me. Jack Mullen was a resource. I talked to him at a AES show in New York one year. Jim Lupus, we gave him credit for some of the information about the all-cart operation. Dave Wolfenden, who was one of my co-workers at ATC. John Bertle, who originally put this slide presentation together for me. John's passed away. And Mike Flood is another fellow that is back here in Bloomington, and we are continue to be big, good friends after many, many years. All those guys I worked with at Automatic Tape Control. And talked with a number of other people to gather information. So I just want to give credit for everybody that provided me with information about the history. So I guess the wrap up was that by the end of the 1980s, the industry had pretty much come to an end, and we'd moved on to other technologies. And so it's something to remember from the past. The one thing that we have not done, which was part of my original presentation, was to talk about Jack Mullen in some depth, who discovered the first tape recorders, which had been put together by the Germans during World War II. And he was in the intelligence force and recognized that they were saying that this was a live recording of Hitler speaking from Berlin, and they knew darn well he wasn't in Berlin at that time. And he said, they've got to have come up with a better way of recording audio than we've ever known before. And Jack does a fantastic job of putting all that together and telling that history. And I'm hopeful that you can, some way or the other, gain access to that information.
Is this the video file that you had sent me before?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
All right. So
not only does he talk about tape recording, he goes through every type of recording that had ever been used by anybody. And he had a museum and I think that's in Minneapolis somewhere. I can't remember where. I tried to work on that for cartridge machines, but they said we just don't have room for machines anymore. We've filled up. Real estate is at a premium. So
Yeah.
anyway, they'll take all the printed material you can give them, but not machines.
So this video that you're talking about, the one from Jack Mullen, yes, you supplied me a copy of that. Thank you for working hard to get that off the original source that it was. And so what we're going to do, I don't feel, just to let our audience know and my fellow engineers know, I don't feel comfortable playing that video as if it were a TWiRT episode, because our shows are sponsored. And I think the Audio Engineering Society had something to do with that, right? With that video?
Yes, I think they published that, and it's probably copyrighted by Audio Engineering Society. But you can buy it from the Audio Engineering Society, and anybody that's deeply interested in tape recording should probably buy one of those to understand what Jack Mullen went through to get to the point of producing the first Ampex machines.
Well, I will just say that if for this show, for every one of these shows, we publish show notes. They appear on my website, thisweekinradiotech.com. They also appear on our YouTube. We publish a new episode, a new page on our YouTube channel, and we have show notes where in those show notes, as long as I can do it, I'll provide a link in this show's show notes to where you can go either download or watch that video that we're speaking of. And I think we can do it that way. And if I do end up getting a takedown or an objection, we'll just take the link off of our show notes. Yeah. But it's a pretty old video, and it seems like it's probably well run its course since the time that it was produced, but it's fascinating information for those of us who are interested in that. I want to ask you about you bought Audicord. Am I correct about that? Did I see that slide right?
Right.
Okay. And Audicord, yeah, go ahead.
Audicord realized when I bought Audicord, I knew it was coming. The industry was coming to a close. Figured I could get several years of operation out of it. And I did. I got maybe 4, 5, 6 years. And it's now known as ACC Electronics. We do electronics manufacturing for people who need to have printed circuit boards or complete assemblies put together and so forth. So we took the electronics experience that we had and turned it into a manufacturing operation.
So, would you be called a contract manufacturer?
Yes, that's a typical name.
Good deal. Well, yes. I know there are companies such as well, there are companies such as my employer who make a lot of things in the U.S., make a few things in China, and that may be changing. We may be bringing more things back to the U.S. for manufacture. I got to ask you though about an Audicord product. You tell me if I'm misremembering. I seem to remember an Audicord cart machine that was a dual machine, and the motor was in the middle, and the shaft extended to the upper deck and to the lower deck. Am I remembering that right?
ITC made a number of machines for Disney that were used in the Disney parks in California and Florida that never entered into the broadcasting business. I don't remember anything like that Audicord did. But I may be wrong. Maybe that was a short life machine that occurred before I got involved with it.
And Audicord's color scheme, was it kind of a beige color?
That's true.
Yeah. I wish I had a picture of that machine. I know I'm not misremembering, and I'm pretty sure it said Audicord, but the motor was in the middle, and there was a top deck that worked kind of like you thought it would. And then you realize, well, wait a minute, there's no reason why the cap stand can't come down from the top. And of course, you had your pinch roller; it's still coming from the bottom, but you used the same motor to feed both. Kind of like an HVAC motor that's got two squirrel cage blowers on the side, a motor with the shaft at both ends.
The various Spotmaster multi-deck machines and ITC machines that were multi-deck use a common capstan motor.
Sure.
So that would be 5 decks. We made some for Disney. That was at ITC. We may have made 6 or 7 or 8. They had some specific requirements, but they were never sold to the broadcasting industry.
Gotcha. Hey, tell you what, Andy, if you will put you on the spot again, think of another tip of the week, and maybe it's to watch the Jack Mullen, and you can watch it and answer a quiz for extra credit, or maybe you have some other tip of the week that you'd like to leave us with. I love hearing the story about the arc of the story of kart machines, and it was a little disorganized at first, different competing factions, and then somehow the NAB got involved, and you touched on that. To make the NAB kart that everybody could go to that standard. But then later on, there was a little bit of bifurcation in the head design. And I remember that Jack Williams with the Tomcat, one thing that you could do with the Tomcat is run it in matrix mode so that it wasn't a left track and a right track, but it was a left plus right track and a left minus right track. And the idea there being that any azimuth errors, you'd still have anomalies on playback, but they would be different than just a simple azimuth error and nulling out of high frequencies on when you listen on a mono radio. It was a different set of it solved some problems, created another, but solved some problems. Anyway, I just think it's an amazing story of how the kart machine came along, and we're all so familiar with them. Andy Rector's going to be right back with a final word. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Tools. And one of the things that Broadcast Tools makes, and they make a lot of stuff. Holy moly, it'll take you a while to go through their website at broadcasttools.com. But one thing they make is the WVRC 8 Plus. What is it? Well, it's a web and voice dial-up remote control. Now, it seems like for decades we had some dial-up remote controls. I remember installing a lot of Sign systems and the one from Gentner. But now there's the WVRC dial-up voice remote control, but it also brings us right into the modern age with web control. So you can remote into it by web. Or if you need to if you're traveling down the road and you can't stop to, use your laptop, and you shouldn't do this while you're driving, but you can use the voice interface to, take meter readings, turn things on and off, check on alarms, that kind of thing from Broadcast Tools. What a problem solver this thing is. It's got a number of features that I'll cover here for you briefly, but there's too many to get them all in here. It does have an NTP time base, or battery backed up real-time clock calendar, which really accurately keeps time on this thing, better than plus or minus 2 minutes a year. So yes, you can use it for like AM station power changes and pattern changes. It has 4 virtual metering channels. So these are derived from other channels like percent power. So you can derive that from other inputs that are coming into it. It has a temperature probe port that allows Fahrenheit or Celsius temperature monitoring anywhere from minus 67 degrees Fahrenheit to 257 degrees Fahrenheit. That'll watch your tube temperature for you. It has an internal temperature monitor too, so you can check on on how well the unit's doing. It has a jack for external power supply. You can power it one way and yet monitor power on something else another way. It has an internet down alarm feature, front panel microphones, so you can remotely listen to what's going on at your transmitter site. Oh, that might surprise you. It has a simple telephone hybrid with send and caller balanced I/O, 100 event program scheduler for relay control or alarm setting. Many, many more functions. Too many to mention. If you can think of it, it's probably in there in the Broadcast Tools WVRC 8 Plus web and voice dial-up remote control. Check it out. And after you check it out, you can go to my friends at Broadcasters General Store to get you one. Get you a quote on this remote control or anything else you need from the folks at BGS. Their website's bgs.cc. Very complete website, but they also enjoy hearing from you. So you can give them a call at 352-622-7700. They do good phone. They got sharp pencils. Oh, look, Suncast has a sharp pencil on the screen right there. They got sharp pencils, good discounts, and they can track your order very, very well at Broadcasters General Store. All right, Andy, we got just a couple of minutes. Do you have any final advice for us? Yes, wake up. Here we are.
I think probably my strongest advice would be to some way or the other get to that Jack Mullins information. I think you'll find that it'll be entertaining and informative and give you the basic start of tape recording as we know it in the United States. And we have to give credit to the Germans for having made it available to Jack Mullins.
I've watched bits and pieces of this video. It's an hour long. I haven't had a whole hour to sit down and watch the whole thing, but we will provide a link to it in the show notes for this episode. So if you're watching this episode, there's a live version out, but watch the edited, finished version that we put out on Friday. It'll be Friday, May the 16th, and in the show notes, I will provide a link so you can watch that video. Andy, this has been just absolutely fantastic to have you. I've learned a lot. Memory lane is wonderful, even though, plenty of us engineers had trouble with cart machines. For the most part, cart machines were not so troublesome. For the most part, they just sat there and worked thanks to their great build design. They're just not too many of them were flaky. Let's put it that way. Would you agree with that?
I think in general that's probably true, and I'd like to think that we were building some really decent ones at both ATC and ITC, and that's not to take away from the other guys that we had some good competitors.
Yeah. Well, competition makes for better products, and I certainly saw a lot of innovations come out. Hey, Andy, thanks again for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I'm so glad I got to meet you a few years ago here in Nashville at the Audio Engineering Society, and I couldn't forget your presentation, so I thought we'd ask you back to do it again.
My pleasure, and thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks a lot to Andy, and thanks to Suncast, who produces our show. He does miracles. I appreciate very much his work. And don't forget to tell your friends about this. If you're watching this on YouTube, would you please hit like and subscribe, and that way you'll get notified when we drop a new episode down. And by the way, we do publish little snippets of episodes later on in the week or early the next week. So if you want to just catch a little 5-minute update or something like that, you can do that too. If you don't feel like you have an hour and 5 minutes to watch a whole episode, but we appreciate you very much. You can always hit pause, and then restart it later. We'll see you next week. We'll be live at Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama next week at WJOU FM with probably with Josh Bone and maybe Don Roden and Shauna Baker and Damien and everybody else down there. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.